But unfortunately, Israel never really conquered that coastal plain, the area of the Philistines. They were supposed to do that. There was the instructions to Joshua to conquer the entire land, but they really had a difficult time driving out the Philistines. In fact, we read about the Philistines in the days of Saul, and later in David's day. They were even coming up and attacking Jerusalem. And so the Philistines remained an opponent, an adversary to the Israelites through the rest of the Old Testament period. And it wasn't until Nebuchadnezzar came along, when he destroyed Jerusalem, pretty much put an end to Judah, the Philistines pretty much met the same fate at that time. That was the end of their nation. So we really don't hear from the Philistines after that. So for the entire Old Testament United Kingdom, divided kingdom period, the Philistines were a thorn in the flesh for the Israelites. Let's move to the central mountainous spine, our next region, our next division. And the central mountainous spine, in many ways, is the exact opposite of the coastal plain. The coastal plain is fertile. The central mountainous spine is not fertile. The coastal plain is just that, a plain. It's level. And the central mountainous spine is mountainous and jaggy with valleys and hills. And the coastal plain was a place where the Philistines lived. And for most of the Old Testament period, the Israelites lived up in the hill country where they were more secure from their enemies, the Philistines, down on the coast. Okay, so the central mountainous spine extends north and south in the country. The only break is in the upper third, which is the Jezreel Valley. So, and as you move north, the hill country of Judah, hill country of Ephraim, there's a break there, the Jezreel Valley, and then in Galilee, the hill country picks up again. So the central mountainous spine, in many ways, was quite the opposite of the coastal plain. And it was difficult for farming there. In certain places, the topsoil would get eroded away, and compared to the coastal plain, it wasn't as easy for farming. And especially today, when a lot of the good topsoil is eroded away, the hill country is difficult to raise crops. We're looking from that area between the hill country of Judah and then the coastal plain. So imagine you're an Israelite looking down on the Philistines there on the coastal plain, and you're nervous about going down there because you know they have chariots and they have iron technology, and your people really don't. You have to go down to get your axes sharpened by the Philistines in the days of the judges. And so the Israelites were content for the most part to stay up in the central mountainous spine, in the hill country, and let the Philistines live on the coastal plain. Now, in the central mountainous spine, or the hill area, travel basically follows the ridge routes. They stay up on the mountains rather than go up and down the valleys. Vines are one of the chief crops for the central mountainous spine, grapevines. And this is an example of a very simple vineyard where the vine is just propped up with a rock. There's no type of trellis arrangement. Sometimes they would make those, but here the vine is just lifted up to keep it from rotting on the ground. Grapes were one of the main crops for the hill country. And grapes really served a great purpose because they could be fed by the dew which would collect every morning, and they would be harvested right at the end of the dry season. So when everybody's cistern was pretty much drying up, it was time for the grape harvest, and so that provided liquid nourishment for the Israelites. So grapes play a very important role in the life of ancient Israel. Another important crop for the hill country is olives. Olives are good for so many things. They're good for eating, but they're also good for cooking. The oil is good for lighting lamps so you can see at nighttime, and even used in religious services. So olives were very important to the Israelite people, and they grew mostly in the hill country. So in order to make the best use of their land in the hill country, they would terrace them, much like they do with the rice fields here in certain parts of the Philippines, to get more land area to grow their things. So we can see here, these trees are growing on terraces. Now the West Bank, that kind of yellow area in the center that's outlined in green, that was won from Jordan in the 1967 war. And the water in that area can be accessed through deep wells. And so this area in the hill country or central mountainous spine is important as a water source. In terms of elevation, in the hill country, a site called Baal Hatzor is very important. It's one of the higher places in the hill country, and Israel uses that today for early detection radar. See, Israel is a very small country. They have hostile neighbors surrounding them from the north, east, and south, and so they need to know, are there any enemy tanks or aircraft coming to attack them or threaten them? And so since the radar transmission travels in a straight line, it has to be up high, so there won't be any obstructions. If it was down on the low coastal plain, it would run into the central mountainous spine. You wouldn't be able to see anything on the other side of the central mountainous spine. So that's why Israel really doesn't want to give back this area that's called the West Bank today, because they need it for their early detection radar stations. And we can see here in this cross-section map of Israel, in yellow is Baal Hatzor, one of the high points in the hill country. And from there, with those radar stations, they can see threats from Syria, from Jordan, and so they can get their defenses together in light of an enemy attack because of the early detection radar stations there. And here's a picture. Those two round things are the radar stations there at Baal Hatzor. Okay, going up farther north to Galilee. Galilee extends west and northwest from the Sea of Galilee. And one of the reasons why Galilee is called Galilee of the Nations in the New Testament is because of the influence of the two major branches of the International Coastal Highway kind of passed by it on both sides. And so Galilee was influenced by the nations. Okay, they had international travelers passing through there. So it was not as secluded as Jerusalem. So thus Galilee got the reputation for being Galilee of the nations, influenced by those Gentile foreigners. Galilee is an area of many valleys, many mountains, and there's two regions to Galilee, Upper Galilee, the part farther north, and Lower Galilee, but Upper Galilee is designated as such because it is higher in elevation. The mountains there are more rugged, they're higher in elevation compared with Lower Galilee. So we're here in Lower Galilee, looking kind of north. we see there in the distance the Beit Hakarim Valley, and just on the other side of that mountain range, it begins Upper Galilee. So there's a series of east-west hills in Lower Galilee, and then you get across the last one and move across the Beit Hakarim Valley, then you're in the area of Upper Galilee, which is much more rugged than Lower Galilee. So we're up on that ridge now, looking back, kind of in an westerly direction. So we're looking out towards the Mediterranean Sea. My teacher there is pointing across the Beit Hakarim Valley to Lower Galilee. So we're right on the edge of Upper Galilee. So behind us is the rugged hills of Upper Galilee. And so a lot of mountains. Most of the roads don't go through Upper Galilee. It's a place to be avoided. It wasn't heavily populated in biblical times, and even to this day, it's very sparsely populated. It's mountainous, as you can see in the slide, but also very beautiful because of all the trees and green vegetation. And again, looking here, you can see how rugged the area is. Difficult to travel through Upper Galilee. Lower Galilee, on the other hand, is an area of rolling hills, mainly in an east-west orientation. And so if you're traveling north or south, going through Lower Galilee means you're going to be going up and down as you go across these hills or mountains that are in an east-west direction. Here's one of those valleys, the Beit Netofa Valley, and the fields are quite fertile in the valleys. But if you're traveling there, you're going to be going up and down several of these valleys and hills. Another valley is called the Turan Valley, and we're looking north there, and you can see it's just a series of valleys and hills in Lower Galilee. So this is a different topographical map. Before we were looking due north, but now we're looking from the south on the right to the north on the left. Okay, so let's start on the far right in the Negev highlands. Okay, and as we look north, which is to the left, we see it goes down and then kind of dips down in the Negev, comes up near Hebron and Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and then kind of stays up in the hill country, then descends down to the Jezreel Valley. And in Lower Galilee, we have places like Nazareth, Mount Turan, and then we move up into Upper Galilee. Okay, so this is a cross-section of the land running north and south. This is what Nazareth looks like today. It's on top of a hill, what we call the Nazareth Ridge. And a lot of Arabs live there to this day. As we move from the area of Lower Galilee, moving south, approaching the Jezreel Valley, the mountains begin to descend and flatten out, and we finally come to the Jezreel Valley.